Oh my goodness, everyone. I've never done this before, but there's just too much out. So we're making a mega roundup compilation video. And I even realized as I went to literally press the record button and like get all the videos up on my computer so that I could reference them, I missed several. So you're just gonna get a highlight of the ones I knew about. Really ones that I tend to talk about on this channel, or, I mean, there's one in particular that is just cannot be not discussed. So this past week, what am I talking about, right? I mean, you know, you clicked on the video, you saw the title, but in the past week, because it was Halloween, a lot of our favorite analog horror series have been updated with a new video, or at least our favorite analog horror creators, mostly our favorites. There's maybe an outlier. I'll get to that in a second. Have uploaded videos. So we have a smorgasbord of wonderful analog horror content. YouTube on Halloween even had a little, the logo, like, changed to a little, like, camcorder, like, you know how they do those little logo animations for, like, special events? When you clicked through it, took you to YouTube's official analog horror playlist. So, you know, even YouTube itself was honoring the genre of analog horror for Halloween, and that's really cool to see. And they've done that recently as well. They had a video just highlighting it, which was part of that playlist that they put out, but it was cool. Chris Straub, the creator of Local58 and writer of Candle Cove and comics artist, he posted on Threads that, you know, analog horror is all grown up because YouTube actually acknowledged it. Speaking of Chris Straub, I would say probably the biggest highlight of this week of analog horror Halloween uploads is Local58 has returned to mainline YouTube content. It's been about 2 years since we've seen anything on the Local58 YouTube channel, so that was huge. If you're not familiar, Local58 is what I and many people consider to be the originator of the analog horror genre. It was created, as I said, by Chris Straub, who it was already popular in internet horror circles because he wrote the beloved creepypasta Candle Cove, and I always highlight him as an important figure because I feel like he's one of the first creepypasta authors to say, I wrote this and you're going to give me credit for it, because I do think that's a big differentiator between analog horror, like internet horror in general, post-analog horror, is we know the creators and they're getting their flowers, essentially, whereas pre-Local58, creepypasta was often anonymous. A lot of the ARGs and stuff we saw were anonymous and we didn't know who created them. So it's definitely, I view him as an advocate for artists getting their flowers and, you know, getting paid to create the things they create. So that's huge. Then Martin Petraeus, the creator of the Walton Files, dropped a direct sequel to his Halloween upload from a few years ago. That was called The Mysterious House. This sequel is called Return of the Pumpkin Rabbit. It's not necessarily like mainline Walton Files, but absolutely incredible work. And then a few days before these, I think these both dropped on Halloween, the Mandela Catalogue had a small kind of in-between mainline video upload called The Unraveling Part 2 that, oh my god, I have a lot to say. I have a lot to say. Y'all know where's the intruder? I am a Mandela Catalogue girly pop. It's my favorite, so I was very excited to get into that. And I'll talk about the Unraveling Part 1 as well, because that was one that was just so small, I couldn't really fit it in anywhere else. And then, this may shock y'all to your core, the fourth one that I am going to talk about is the newest Urbanspook video, which dropped around Halloween. I don't know if it was actually on Halloween or not. I have been very vocal. A very vocal critic of Urbanspook ever pretty much since I started this channel. This is a series I quite dislike. 2 times I've been very negative. It's either about Urbanspook, which is a notorious analog horror series that is kind of like shock value for shock value's sake. Speaking of not for me, Urbanspook's The Painter. I hate this. I've also praised Urbanspook in some capacities, mostly the music and the art, but the music really, I talked about him a lot in my Music of Analog Horror video, because the music to me is some of the best in analog horror. I'm a very open critic of the shock value and gore for gore's sake that permeates that series, the Painter being the series. I know a lot of us just call it Urbanspook, but Urbanspook is the creator, the Painter is the series. So there was a new entry, the first in about a year, to the Painter that is very different from the other videos in that series. And I'm not going to say I'm fully 180'd on Urbanspook, but it is something worth talking about. And when series that I don't like do something that I do like, I feel the need to say something about it, because I don't ever want to be that, you know, critic or YouTuber, whatever you want to call me, analyst, that just doubles down on shit I hate and never acknowledge the good parts of it. And if a series I love does something I don't like, you know, I want to try to be open about it as well. So those are the 4 that I'm going to be talking about today. They're all like small enough that like I don't think they could get their own video. I could have done that, I could have milked this, but honestly I think it's going to be more enjoyable to just do kind of like a Halloween 2024 analog horror roundup. The other 2 that I realized dropped literally as I was they dropped a few days ago, but I didn't know they dropped until recently, is there's a new Vita Carnis. I'll level with y'all, I'm just not caught up on Vita Carnis, so I couldn't have talked about that even if I watched it. Maybe I'll make a Vita Carnis like season 2 video in general eventually. That was never my favorite originally, but I have not caught up, and I've heard really good things about the newer videos, so I look forward to that. So that may come in the future. And then the Dwight Comics channel, which is another one of Manticore's projects, where she's put a lot of the, you know, Nixon verse type stuff, just put up the Caveman series, I think in its entirety, that used to live on Manticore, but now I think she's moved it to this side channel. So that I am also not going to cover today. I'm keeping it to, I would say, you know, I would call Local58, Walton Files, and Mandela Catalogue like the big 3. I would maybe argue take Mandela Catalogue out and put Gemini in its place as far as like being on one wave of analog horror, because I feel that Mandela Catalogue came after, and that like Mandela and Urbanspook are in the same wave of analog horror that I would also put Manticore and the Monument Mythos on. But at this point, the Mandela Catalogue is a juggernaut in this space, so I would call, you know, I would include it in the big 3. So the fact that there was a Local58, a, you know, Walton Files, and a Mandela Catalogue that came out within the span of a week is crazy. Just to put it into perspective, all of the Mandela Catalogue, pretty much, except for like 5 and maybe, I think just 5, came out between the Walton Files 3 and the Walton Files 4. So it is crazy that Martin and Alex put something out in the same week. And then Local58, it's just been so long, it was like, I thought it was a joke when I thought it was an old video that was just being suggested to me, because that's happened to me before, where I've gotten an old Local58 video show up in my YouTube feed, and I think it's a new one, and it's just not. So let's get into it. Some of these there's not as much to talk about, but some of them there is more to talk about, so we're just going to go through it. Let's start off with the OG. Let's start off with Local58. So, Local58, as I said previously, it's the big papa pickle of the analog horror genre, subgenre, whatever you want to call it. We wouldn't have any of this without it. It is very much the blueprint, and analog horror has definitely changed a lot since Local58, but a lot of our favorites were literally following the blueprint of Local58. So, previously, before this newest video, which there's technically 2 new videos, but I'm going to focus on one. Previously, before this, there was a video that showed Local58 going digital, which I thought was really cool, and I thought was going to, like, spur a whole thing. Turns out it did, and I just wasn't aware of it. I'll get to that in a second. But the premise of Local58, if you're not familiar, which I urge you to just go binge it, it's not that long, it's great, is there is this news station, Local58, that is just broadcasting random things, and they all are a little off, a little quirky, lots of broadcast interruptions or emergency alerts, and they all have to do with something weird happening with the moon. That's kind of the through line, which is cool. It's not necessarily a conventional narrative. It's just weird happenings in this community, and the moon has something to do with it. So this recent video is called Night Walk, and essentially what happens in this is we see the new modern digital look of Local 58. However, they show us a TV show called Night Walk, which I take to be some sort of like Unsolved Mysteries style show, and this is from the 70s. So despite Local 58 being new, they're showing a rerun of an older show, so you can get that kind of old aesthetic. I think that Chris absolutely nails the vibe of Night Walk. It feels like Unsolved Mysteries, and it's covering this phenomenon called the woman in profile. It's this woman that people keep seeing looking up at the sky, which of course is a tell, right, for Local 58, the moon. And she keeps appearing in different locations, and there have been several documented instances of her showing up, and then we cut from Night Walk to found footage from someone like out in the woods somewhere seeing this woman in profile, and we can see clearly now that she has two faces on each side, and there's a quick flash, and we see that it is an alien that has some sort, that's tricking people into thinking that it is a woman, because of the way that it's set up. It's like a camouflage. And so I'm assuming that these are maybe from the moon, something like that. I think this is the first we've seen an actual, like, critter in Local 58. It's usually not really, this is not a series known for its analog horror scary faces. I would say we can blame the Mandela Catalogue for that one. But it was cool to see a little critter, and I think he looks really cool. I was a little let down, I will say, because I just love the very vague, weird phenomenon of, like, a lady that just keeps showing up looking at the sky. Like, I get why it's aliens, it makes sense, because we are very space-themed with this series, but, I was a little let down. I kind of was hoping for just, like, unexplained phenomena, weird woman, like, like a Men in Black, Indrid Cold type thing. But that's okay. I'm fine with it. I think it's cool, and I'm just so happy that Local 58 is back. And the thing that I missed is there's a whole ARG that's been going on since Chris stopped posting. So there's a whole website for Local 58, local58.tv, and right now it's like a fake Wayback Machine called the Look Back Web Archive. So let me know down below if you want me to just do a deep dive of this website, because I'm probably just gonna do it anyway, whether you guys want it or not, because y'all know I love to screen record me looking through a website. I don't think y'all like it because those videos always flop, but I don't really care because I'm just gonna do it anyway, so why not record it for the 5 people that want to see it. But I'm just excited that it's back. I'm excited to see where it goes, and I'm excited to deep dive that website. So, that's it for Local 58. Again, I could have never made a whole video about that, right? It's just not big enough. So now I'm going to move on to the Walton Files, but not the Walton Files, but Martin Pedreus and the Walton Files team. With Return of the Pumpkin Rabbit. So, Return of the Pumpkin Rabbit, like I said, is a direct sequel to The Mysterious House, which is honestly a video I had missed. I had never watched that one. There was just a period of time where I just zoned away from the Walton Files after it had, part 3 had come out, and I guess I just missed this. So I watched that before I watched Return of the Pumpkin Rabbit, because obviously I wanted it to make sense. I knew they were directly linked, and essentially the lore of this kind of spin-off series, I wouldn't call it canon to the Walton Files. Maybe I'm wrong. There are definitely Walton Files fans who will know more than me. I'm not like an ultimate Waltina like some of you. I love it, but I'm not as engrossed in the lore as many people are. So the Pumpkin Rabbit is looks a lot like Bond, and he lives in this dilapidated, creepy house in the neighborhood with his wife, who is the witch sheep, and she looks a lot like Cha, but she's like a dark gray sheep with horns, and the pumpkin rabbit is orange. And essentially they entice trick-or-treaters and then kidnap them and kill them. It's quite upsetting. In the first one, we see that Billy the Clown, who is in the Walton Files, and the TV character from the Walton Files, also is there helping them. And in the mysterious house, our two main characters are Ducky and Tommy, I believe, and Tammy, and they end up getting killed by the pumpkin rabbit and the witch sheep. So, cut to, and I believe that was set in the 70s, cut to Return of the Pumpkin Rabbit. It's a few years later, and we have a new set of trick-or-treaters that are visiting this mysterious house. And we learn at this point that Ducky and his friend, they were seen going into the house. So, like, the authorities caught on and figured out what happened and, like, found all the bodies and stuff. Because, I mean, they had killed a lot of trick-or-treaters over the years. And essentially the town went full mob justice on them and, like, grabbed them all, took them to the center of town and burned them alive. So now it's just an abandoned house, so they're, like, all daring each other to go in. And all of them go in except for one who's freaked out and stays outside. And of course they go in, and the witch sheep is still there. She is alive. She is, you know, scary as hell, let me tell you. And we find that the pumpkin rabbit is also alive. He's out in the back and ends up killing the child that stayed outside. And, you know, they pursue them throughout the house, end up in this basement area that we can tell is very similar to the location that Ducky was killed in the first Mysterious House video. We learned that the pumpkin rabbit and the witch sheep are named Lorenzo and Rachel, which there's something so funny about. I don't know, her being named Rachel, like, that's just such a normal name. Lorenzo's a normal name too, they're just like, I don't know. I just think it's really funny. And their last name is Waterman, and that's the repeated thing throughout the series, that the Watermans were a very, very bad couple. The doggy and the penguin character end up surviving, and they actually are able to take down the Watermans because the doggy burns their book full of all the pictures of the kids that they had killed, and that, like, releases the spirits of the kids, who then, like, rip them apart, tear them down, and destroy them. So then the dog's dad arrives and takes them home, and we see that they weren't there. They were just the ghosts, and the kids could see them, probably because, you know, the magic of Halloween or something. But we can assume that, you know, the spirits of the children that were killed were able to truly get rid of the evil entities of the Watermans, and then hopefully the kids were able to live on, you know, and not be stuck in, like, this weird purgatory. Because we find out that Billy the Clown and the TV were trick-or-treaters that were then kind of forced to take part in the killings, and the same was happening with Ducky. So it's kind of like a weird cycle of abuse thing. But, I mean, like Walton Files 4, it is incredible to see the uptick in quality of this. Because I watched Mysterious House and Return of the Pumpkin Rabbit back to back, and it's crazy. Not that Mysterious House is bad. I love the early Walton Files aesthetic. I know a lot of people don't, but it is crazy, the jump in quality, and, you know, just the team behind it. Like, I know that Coraline Heck, who does a lot of voice work as well, did the 3D models for the house, which was really cool. Added a lot, and just the quality of the drawings. It's such an interesting look. Like, they feel like you can reach out and touch them. Like, they almost feel like puppets, even though they're 2D drawings. And it was scary. Like, it was deeply unsettling. Rachel Waterman is one of the scariest analog horror characters I've ever seen. There's something, her face looks more like realistically like an animal, I think, than any of the other Walton Files drawings, characters. She looked so much like a real sheep, it kind of unsettled me. It just really freaked me out. And they're so big. And that's something that I get from the Walton Files as well, is like the animatronics always feel so large and looming over whoever the victim is. And you really could feel that in this, especially because, you know, the main characters, our protagonists, were children. They were really tiny and cute. So I just really enjoyed this. This is something I could see myself watching every Halloween, because, you know, the other things that came out were just like, to me, analog horror projects being like, oh, I'll probably get a few more views if I do this around Halloween. It's the scary time. This to me feels like Martin and the team wanted to make another Halloween classic, and I would call it that. I would probably watch this every year now, because it's just, it's scary, it's weird, it's cute, it's everything you want out of a nice little Halloween special. Like, this is my Charlie Brown and the Great Pumpkin. Luckily, I'm not going to have kids, so I won't force them to watch this. That's really all I have to say. I don't really have analysis for this. I mean, there were little Easter eggs. I saw Bon the entity, not Bon the rabbit, on the wall at one point. I thought that was cool. But really all I have to say about this is I loved it, and keep up the good work, Walton Files team, because the quality is unmatched. Next, and here's where I'm going to get a little more into analysis time, I guess. I'm going to talk about the Mandela Catalogue and the Unraveling Part 1 and 2, and this is the one that really, for me personally, rocked my world. I was, ooh, it made me go, ooh. So let's bring the intruder up here to hang out with me. He's not in this video, so it doesn't matter, but so the first Unraveling came out, I think, right after Volume 5 came out, and I really, really liked it and was very surprised by it, but I didn't include it in my Volume 5 video because I'd already talked so much in that video, and I saw that it was called Part 1, so I assumed that there would be a Part 2. I almost made an entire video just about this, but, you know, if I'm doing this, it makes more sense to pop it in here. So, in the Unraveling Part 1, we see this, it's a TikTok, which is cool. That's the first we've seen TikTok in the Mandela Catalogue verse. We saw a Vine compilation before, and we know that the alternates can mess with digital technology at this point, right? It's apparent because of like Face Studio and all that stuff. We know that that's happening, so that's on the table. So I do like that modern social media is being incorporated. So in the Unwrapping Part 1, we see this TikTok account, and it's called All Gone, All Dark, All Gone. And it's just a girl doing like a skincare routine, but it keeps looping, and as it continues looping, it keeps kind of devolving and degrading until it ends with this fully black room, and instead of the girl sitting at the makeup table, we just see a face in the mirror, and then it like kind of pans. That shit is very effective to me. I know a lot of people probably are not scared by that type of stuff. That is like viscerally upsetting to me. And you can laugh, and I know there's a wider argument going on right now. There's like a Walton Files video that came out recently saying like the Walton Files is bad, and I know that the guy, I haven't watched the video yet. I don't know if I want to bother, but one of the guys, his argument is just calling people pussies for thinking that it's scary. And it's one of the biggest things I advocate for on this channel is that everyone's version of scary is different, and that's okay. That's totally fine. And I do find the Walton Files scary, but to me, again, the scariest of any of these to me was these Mandela Catalogue videos, because it is just tapping into what freaks me out. So, you know, I'm sure each one of us, well, everyone watching this probably thinks a different one of these four is scary, right? That's that one. The Unraveling Part 2 is the one that came out, I believe, the day before Halloween. And y'all, I was so happy. I was so happy. So, first off, Dave Lee's back. And if you haven't watched my other Mandela Catalogue videos, or just other videos, because I joke that if you take a shot every time I mention the Mandela Catalogue, you'll die. Dave Lee is one of the 2 adult characters in the Mandela Catalogue. He works for Mandela Tech, which is a, independent Radio Shack type place, and his main contribution to the series is that he takes tapes given to him by Lieutenant Thatcher Davis, the other adult character in the Mandela Catalogue, and kind of processes them, and he continues to work with the analog technology even after it's been outlawed with the TV and Mirror Destruction Act. So, Dave Lee, spoiler alert, was killed in Volume 4. Dark day for me, because I love Dave Lee. Dave Lee's a very contentious character in the fandom, because he is just Alex Kister, the creator, who is like a 21-year-old young man with a voice pitched down and a mustache, like a bad mustache and sunglasses, and he's supposed to be like 45 in some versions of the Mandela Catalogue, because there's multiple settings, and we have like the 90s, and then we have like the 2000s, so, sometimes Thatcher and Dave are very convincing because it's 1992, but then other times, you have 2 21 to 23-year-olds pretending to be 40 with septum piercings and fake mustaches. It's okay. I am the leader of the Thatcher Davis army, so you can't say anything to me. But anyway, Dave Lee's back. I was very happy because I thought we would never get Dave again. So, unlike the Unraveling Part 1, this, I believe, is set in the 90s. This video has Dave talking about VHS generation loss, which is essentially the idea that as you continue to copy a tape, it slowly loses quality with each generation or copy of the tape. And this is something that happens with pretty much most types of media, images, video, whatever. And you have the idea of lossy versus lossless. So, like, for example, I'm a graphic designer. When you make something in Photoshop, it's a raster, so it's lossy. But if you make something in Adobe Illustrator, it's a vector and it's lossless. So it doesn't matter how many times you copy it or how many times you scale it up and down. It'll be fine, it'll look the same, but with a raster or lossy file, it will continue to devolve, downgrade. So this is something that happened with VHS tapes a lot. That's the idea, like, that when you tape over things, or when your parents used to tape over things, sometimes the quality would get shittier because the tape just couldn't handle it anymore. I just like to see, like, the tech talked about in an analog horror series like this. I think that's really cool, especially because it makes sense in the lore of this series, because the alternates, do live off of and use the technology to manipulate those around them. And we have a main character with Dave, who it's literally his job. So Dave is talking about generation loss, but then he says, as he's been copying and messing with tapes, I assume from Thatcher, he's noticed that there is another type of loss that may have to do with outside interference, which we can assume is the alternate. Dave takes a Bible cartoon, which is clearly from the same series of Bible cartoons that we were seeing in the Mandela Catalogue, all the way back to Overthrown, the original video, down to, they stopped about halfway through, and now it seems that they've switched to just making their own, because in the last one, Thorne Baker animated the Bible section, which I prefer, for sure. But he takes this Bible story cartoon that is depicting the resurrection of Jesus, when Mary found him, that he'd left can you tell I'm not religious? When the tomb was empty. And he's using that and making the copies. And he says that it's very quiet and he's all alone in the shop that night, but he knows that that's not true. So I think that he has waited until he knows that there is an alternate present so that the alternate can affect the tape. And that's exactly what happens. The first base copy is fine. It's just your normal, cartoon. And I got very excited about I'll get to that in a second. Never mind. I'll get to that in my analysis. But it keeps devolving as the copies are made. And this had me on the edge of my seat. It really spooked me out. And by version 3, there's weird shit happening pretty much immediately. But by version 3, the Timorol ad from volume 5 is showing up, which to me is confirmation that Timorol is an alternate planted drug, which is kind of something I theorized in 5, but to me that's a confirmation of that. So yay, everybody go, yay, Glitchwitch, you were right. Oh my god, thank you. You see the church that Mark visited in earlier episodes. And after the third one, this image will haunt me forever. And it's literally the thumbnail, so I don't know why it took me by surprise so much, but it did. After the third one plays, Dave pans over to the window. There's just legs in the window. That freaks me out. And he's so unfazed by it, and I'm guessing it's because he knew there was an alternate present. But I don't to see just the body is so freaky to me. I don't know why it gets me so bad. My husband was saying it was very Silent Hill, and it did feel very Silent Hill. Just this image of these legs outside the window. And I think that's an interesting thing that I would love to see explored more is just focusing on different parts of the alternate attempting to replicate the body, because maybe that alternate hadn't gotten the head quite right yet, so it was just the legs and it was just peeking through the window that way because the face wasn't quite there yet. Because we see in volume 3 when Thatcher's alternate is literally shaping his head to look like Thatcher, so we know that it takes a little bit of I don't know, their alternate magic that they have. I hated that. It really freaked me out. And Dave's just okay, period, let's move on. We get to the 4th, and Gabriel makes an appearance first as just the normal straight up cartoon. I believe the fandom calls him Toonbriel, but with the black square over his face. It starts to just turn black and white, and there's fuzz and interference. It shows the Marys going in and checking out the tomb. And I was, again, shitting my pants at this point, because I just, it makes me so uncomfortable. And they go into the tomb, and our Gabriel that we're used to seeing is there, and it's, glitching between the more rendered Gabriel and the cartoon Gabriel. And this sequence starts repeating and really wigging out, and the phrases all gray, all dark, and all gone show up. And if you remember, that's the name, all dark, all gone was the name of the TikTok account in the Unraveling Part 1. So that is a phrase that I think we're going to need to seriously pay attention to as this series continues. And Dave pans back to the outside, sees the legs again, and then it pauses with the bars on the TV, and then we see an analog horror scary face, if I ever saw one. That just shook me to my core. I hate this thing. It really looks like the sculpted police sketches that they used to do. It's not a sketch, it's a sculpt, but the actually physically molded victims that they would do, when they would find bodies and try to reconstruct their facial features through an actual 3D model. That's what it looks like to me, and I hate it. And it's such a different look for an alternate. We haven't seen anything like this. So I loved this video. So what do I think this means Exactly. Well, first of all, I think there's a clear connection between the unraveling part 1 and part 2, and I think that part 1 is showing that this alternate generation loss can exist in any type of media. It doesn't matter. So the idea that a TikTok, is meant to loop, it just plays over and over and over again, right? That inherently is not lossy. That inherently isn't going to break down because it's just how the platform is built. It's just the same video playing over and over again. But that doesn't mean that if an alternate gets involved, the alternate generation loss can't happen. So I think what's happening to the video in Unraveling Part 1 is we're seeing that alternate generation loss happening to this TikToker, and that may be how it got her eventually. The face at the end of that in the mirror looks very similar to the face outside this window, and we know for a fact that this alternate did not get Dave, because Dave went on to live for another, I don't know exactly when this video is taking place, but I'm assuming it's the 90s, so he lived until the 2000s. So I don't know that the TikToker has been harmed yet, but it's very scary to think that the alternates are able to manipulate modern video that way, because everything loops. TikToks, Instagram Reels, Facebook Reels, YouTube Shorts, like all this shit is just looping. So if the alternates can take control that way, we have a serious problem. So I don't know exactly what the all dark, all gone means. The only thing I can think is like alternate domination at this point. And maybe even that TikTok was planted by the alternates to spread, and people who like that video or whatever, it will then affect them, or if they repost it, or however that works. I say that just because the actual name of the TikTok account was all gone or all dark, whichever it was. So I wonder if that's like an alternate plant and the girl in the video was actually an alternate, because her face is blocked out, and I don't know if it was actually blocked out for real in the video or if that was just like on our end watching it. So maybe her face wasn't quite right. We don't know. But I loved this. I loved seeing Dave again. I loved, like I said, that the analog technology was part of it. And watching the tape slowly deteriorate freaks me out. Like, it made me so uncomfortable. This is very Skinamarink core to me. The tension was great, and just the image of the legs, I think, has to be one of the most haunting things in the entire series of the Mandela Catalogue. Like, it freaked me out. And then, yeah, grade A analog horror scary face at the end. I was, add that one to the ranks. Am I right? I'd like to know his name. But that's all I have for the Mandela Catalogue, so I'll put the intruder back. You weren't in this one. That's all I asked. Alex Kister, if you see this, please put the intruder back. Somehow, somewhere, I miss him. He's my favorite. But thank you for bringing Dave Lee back. I never thought I'd get that, so I'll take that as a win. Okay. Let's get to the part that I didn't want to do. No, I do, because it's my channel and I wouldn't be, doing this if I didn't want to do it. Let's talk about Urbanspook Analog Horror Hell, the latest installment of The Painter. I'm good, I'm fine. If you're not familiar with my one-sided beef with Urbanspook, I say one-sided because Urbanspook doesn't know I exist, and I'd like to keep it that way. I'm not a fan. I have long said I'm not a fan. I'm not the only one, that's for certain. I would say this is one of the most controversial analog horror series to be currently running, if not the most, save for maybe like the FNAF VHS tapes, but again, that's not because of the series, that's because of the creator. I don't know a lot about Urbanspook as a person. I'm sure that he's fine, and I don't think he is a bad person or has done anything bad. I see a lot of people accuse him of, like, because of the things he talks about in his videos, that he would, like, condone that. I don't think that's the case. I literally think he's just kind of a dick and he's an edgelord. Like, that's his biggest crime, right? Now, the reason that these videos get a lot of flack from me and others is because it truly feels like edginess for edginess' sake. It's just so over the top to the point that sometimes the kills are, like, comical. Like, there's the iconic one where the guy gets trapped in a big old thing of wax in the middle of his living room. And it's like, how did the killer even make that work? Like, logically, how did that happen, right? It's just so over the top. But the big thing that upsets a lot of people, myself included, is there is a recurring character named Corey Beck. Now, Corey Beck and his sister Margaret were victims of the serial killer, the painter, and, you know, I know there's a lot of controversies in general in horror spaces right now saying, like, some people saying, you can't kill kids in horror movies. I'm not one of those people. I know a lot of people have come for the Terrifier series saying that it's horrible because kids are killed. Kids have been killed in horror movies forever. The issue with Corey is in the very first video of the painter, there's painting shown because, if you are not aware, the premise is there's a serial killer who is very gruesome, and they paint a picture of their victims, and those are often found at the crime scene. There's a painting found in the first video called Boy Corey. You can then assume that Corey Beck, that was his painting, right? And Corey and Margaret are, like, cut in half and reattached to each other, and it's just gruesome, and he literally sold merch of the Corey painting. So that, to me, is poor taste. I love horror. I love graphic horror. I am not opposed to gore and violence. I'm not. But that's just unnecessary, and it's like he knows what he's doing. And the other problem is that he has doubled down on this shit and been very hostile on Twitter. There's an infamous rant where he calls Ches Kids an autistic furry as an insult. So autistic furries, get behind me. I'm gonna be your shield right now. Now, that being said, why am I talking about it? Why am I talking about Hell, the recent upload, if I'm such a hater? I have long said that I hope that Urbanspook grows as a creator, that I hope that he changes, and I want to see improvements in his work, and that I think he has a lot of potential as an artist, because he does. He's a wonderful painter. His music, incredible. Some of the best music in analog horror. Like, it's so good. It's it's like the thing that makes these videos scary to me. So, I always want people to improve. Can I confidently say that Hell undoes everything that I previously disliked? No, absolutely not. But there is enough in this that I think it's worth talking about, and that I think it's worth me finally giving my first breakdown analysis of an Urbanspook video. So, this video, Hell, some people are saying it's the finale to the series. I'm not sure if it actually is. I get why people think it might be, but I wouldn't be surprised if he continues that, and I maybe would be interested to see how he continues it. But regardless, this is a big turning point, both plot-wise and art-wise in this series. So, it opens with the classic warning: this video is extremely graphic, contains extremely graphic and disturbing content. I do appreciate that he warns us. It starts off pretty typical. You know, the format typically of this series is image text. Usually a photo text, and then they do this is the painting, show the painting. Which is fine, and when this series started, photo text was the thing that had a grip on analog horror, for sure, so I get it. Which is funny, because he claims, like, I've never watched analog horror, and I'm just like, I called it analog horror because it's a VHS tape, so it's technically analog horror, and this motherfucker knows the trends. I'm sorry, I don't believe that shit for a second. I've talked about that before, I just think it's crazy. But anyway, so this one starts off with classic photo text. Not mad at that, it's fine, I have no issue with it. That there was a anonymous tip to the police about a abandoned paint and textile warehouse. The thing that is cool about this video versus the previous ones is most of it is filmed. We get like actual, what I assume, I know for a fact that the end part is, but this first part is like police body cam footage exploring this warehouse. And we actually see these bodies as they're found, and they're blurred out. It's again relies on graphic text descriptions rather than necessarily the visuals. And don't get me wrong, it's nasty, it's over the top, but there's something about finding it in this fashion that works more for me. I think it looks great. I believe it's 3D modeled. So again, the fact that he's like, I don't follow analog horror. It's like, you absolutely do, because everybody and their mother is doing 3D modeling now, which I'm not saying that he's copying. I just think that's a skill that a lot of our favorite analog horror artists are developing, because it gives them more creative freedom to do what they need to do. And I'm so glad that he has learned it, and he's good at it. It looks really nice. And it felt scary, like it was really good found footage. And, you know, you could see just enough of the bodies to be icked out without it being like gruesome. And obviously YouTube's not going to allow him to show all of that anyway. But, you know, it's your pretty standard, like, I'm not going to go over every single kill, but there are some photos that are found, which the photos are always drawn. And that's another criticism that he gets a lot, is like, what's a photo? What's a painting? Pick a style. I don't know. But the photos are of like a guy in like a gimp suit, which I'll get to who I think that is later. And, you know, they find a bunch of bodies again, and they find a bunch of paintings as well. And we see more paintings. We have more little diagrams showing how the bodies were put together, which is kind of a staple of the series at this point as well. And they find Corey and Margaret together, which I know he deliberately included that because to piss people off, like, whatever. I'm not over it. I'm never gonna be over it because I think it's disgusting, but like, I see what you're trying to do. So they end up going deeper down to like the sewer system that's connected to this warehouse. And on the wall, there's a bunch of graffiti written that has the phrase, "Once you've been to hell, you never come back." And this is a quote from Tina Rosenberg, who is the only surviving victim of a attack by the painter. And this was a phrase she said in an interview. They show that.
Do you think that you've recovered from this ordeal?
I'll never recover. I'll never be the same. Those people took me to hell. And once you've been in hell, you never come back.
So I love to see that. I love to see like actual footage of a person in this series. But not that you have to have that, but it's good world building. Because I think that's something I've struggled with this series the whole time, is some of it just doesn't make sense always. Why are we watching these tapes? Who found these tapes? It's become such a high profile case that it doesn't make sense to me that like, oh, someone just found them in the attic, because I think that was the original setup. You know, this is, I assume, making worldwide news at this point because the body count of this serial killer is nuts. So just little things like it being body cam footage, seeing Tina talk, like those all help me believe this in this world and this story a little bit more. And, you know, it's almost a little too late, but I'll get to that in a second. So the police are immediately worried about Tina's safety because of finding this. So they do like a all bulletin to get to Tina's house, and an officer shows up at Tina's house, walks in, hears just blood-curdling screaming. Very effective performance by whoever is doing the screaming, because it got me. You know, I'm almost desensitized to a lot of the over-the-top shit in this series because it's so ridiculous, but the screaming got me. They find Tina's mother dismembered in the kitchen, and then in the most compelling and shocking scene for me of this entire series, the officer walks into Tina's bedroom, and we see the killers attacking Tina. And the male killer, wearing a mask, runs at the officer. He's shot. The main killer, the female killer, the painter, puts her hands up and is arrested. Tina was attacked. They stabbed her with knitting needles in the eyes and the ears, so she just keeps screaming because she doesn't know she's being saved, which, that to me is an example of using something gruesome and brutal to be very, like, devastating and emotional storytelling. Like, violence can be used for compelling storytelling. You have movies like Martyrs or Salo that I think use gruesome things to tell a very tragic story and make you understand and empathize with the character. And for some reason, Tina works for me. I'm not mad at it. Like, yes, it's cruel, but these things do happen in real life. There are cruel people. So whereas Corey and Margaret seem senseless and it doesn't convey anything to me. I don't feel for them other than like, ew, that's gross. Why are we doing this? Why are you including this? Including Tina continuing to scream even though she's being saved, like, that's very visceral to me, and I am compelled by that. And the other biggest bombshell that, again, I don't know how I feel about it because I think it's really cool, and I kind of hope that they do make more, that he does make more videos, because it's like, this is tacked on in the last 20 seconds. The male killer was Bill Collins, who, if you remember your Urbanspook lore, which I feel like a lot of people that subscribe to me probably don't because they don't bother. But Bill Collins is the police officer from the second video whose family was all brutally killed, and they thought that he was too. He's the one with the infamous, the other one that I think is ridiculous and just over the top, the long-necked angel, the baby, that's his daughter. So this whole time, Bill Collins was helping the female killer, whose name, I need to get her name, Mona Lanius, is the painter. So that was revealed, I believe, in the last video that there were two killers, or a few videos ago that there were two killers, which I think is interesting, and I thought that was interesting. And it just kind of ends there. So I can see why people think the series is ending with this, because while she got caught, you can't kind of keep doing the gimmick of, here's the painting. Unless, you know, they just do interviewing her in prison. I can see where it could go. It'll be interesting to see where he takes it. So again, this has not absolved Urbanspook of all that he's done in the past, in my opinion. But to me, this is proof that he is a good artist, and there is a lot of potential here. And this one didn't feel as, like, edgy and over the top. It felt really uncomfortable. The pacing was really good, and I think that the visuals are now strong enough that he doesn't need to rely on the ridiculous shock value that we saw earlier in some things. Because imagine if you did the found footage of the wax thing, or the long-necked angel, or whatever. Like, it would just be a little too much. So I'm not, like I said, I can't fully absolve the guy. I can't say I'm a fan of the painter, but I was pleasantly surprised by this video. I won't lie to you. I really do hope he continues to do the 3D modeling and the found footage style. And really, at the end of the day, I would love to see a new series from Urbanspook, and we could just kind of start fresh. And, you know, it'd be cool if he owned up to the fact that he's kind of been a baby on social media in the past with the, you know, autistic furry comments and things like that. So it's a sore spot. Urbanspook will always be a weird one for me. But again, I don't ever want to be that creator that just blindly continues to hate something, even if it, you know, kind of ends up compelling me. So I'm not going to lie to you and say that I didn't, you know, really like all the film segments in this. I really did. I thought they were good. The warehouse stuff reminds me, there's a creepypasta that I had never heard of until Creepcast read it recently, called The Pancake Family, that I know that the Creepcast boys ended up kind of thinking was stupid, and it is very Urbanspook in the end. But the setup to that was very interesting to me, and this reminded me a lot of the setup to that. So if you liked this, I would consider reading The Pancake Family, which that sounds like the title of an Urbanspook video, to be honest. That is my analog horror roundup for, you know, end of October 2024. I think it's so awesome that so much is coming out. You know, a lot of people like to say that the genre's dead. It's alive and well. It's finally getting recognition from YouTube. We're getting the titans of the genre coming back with people like Chris Straub, Martin Pedreas, and, you know, we're even seeing improvements from some of the, you know, at least villains of my story. And yeah, I will say, I didn't really say this in the Mandela Catalogue section, but I meant to. I was someone, and I kind of talked about this in my Volume 5 video, I kind of Stockholm Syndromed myself into liking Volume 5 more as I continue to watch it, which is just kind of how I am in general. If I watch something over and over again, I eventually start to like it, unless it's like Urbanspook. But the Unraveling Part 2 is really, it got back to the core of what I love about the Mandela Catalogue. So I'm very hopeful for that series if it continues down that track. And recently Alex said on a thing on Instagram that people that liked Volume 4 will like Volume 6, and I am one of those people. So I'm looking forward to the future of that series. Obviously looking forward to the future of the Walton Files, even though Return of the Pumpkin Rabbit wasn't like a mainline episode. Just the visuals are so stunning, and the storytelling is on point. It's very effective. It's very, you know, simultaneously fun and cute, but visceral and deeply upsetting, that I just can't wait to see Volume 5 of the Walton Files and, you know, learn more about Bon and all that, and just see more of Martin and Co's beautiful animation and visual stylings. And yeah, Local58, I'm just glad you're back, Diva. And I am going to deep dive that website, because that was just one of those things where I just missed that. Just missed that it existed. So look for that in the future. And, you know, these are all pretty big titans of analog horror. So please, let me know what some of your favorite smaller series are. That's one of my favorite things about doing this YouTube channel, is finding new series through y'all. I mean, I found the McKinney Family Home Videos and Sisterhood of Salvation and Dreams of an Insomniac and things like that through you guys. So I love your recommendations. I just got recommended some non-Kane Pixels backroom series in the American Horror Stories backroom videos I just put out. So I'm super excited to dive into those. Maybe I'll make some more backrooms content in the future, because I always love to talk about the backrooms. But please comment below any series you'd like me to check out, and also let me know what you thought of any of these. You know I have a few Urbanspook lovers lurking. You're safe with me. It's okay. I'm sorry, I'm mean. I'm gonna keep being mean. Don't think I'm gonna stop being mean. But let me know what you think of all of these. And, you know, thank you so much for watching. And I want to thank my lovely YouTube members We have the creepypasta OCs up on screen, and then in survival horror emo, we have E-Rob and so-called Punk, and then in analog horror scary face, we have Kira Coffer. So there were lots of analog horror scary faces today. Were there not? Does Rachel Waterman count as an analog horror scary face? I think she does. I'm sorry. Rachel Waterman is gonna get me forever. Like, that's an elementary school teacher, not the witch. I just think that's so funny. I'm sorry. There was a great tweet I saw. If I can find it, I'll put it up. But it was like, did the Watermans fall in love because of their mutual love for child killing, or was that just an added bonus? Oh, man. Thank you so much for watching. Watch out for any weird paintings you find on the ground. Bye!